Oh yeah, it beeped.
Come.
Okay, all right. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about a bit now. And this is, again, as I say, we're recording, and hopefully you'll be able to go and have a look at this on Blackboard. So I'm just going to talk to you through then, probably just for about half hour or so, and then we'll have a break, about what you have to do for your assignment for this video. Right. First and foremost, it's 3,000 words, okay? So that's quite a big, that's a bigger one than you've done before. How big is appreciating evidence for practice? 2,000. Right, okay, 2,000. When you all speak, it's musical, but I can't read it. So okay, so this is by then you will be much more used to writing assignments, and this is going to be basically a topic that you choose for yourself. So hopefully it's something you're going to be very interested in, and that you will want to continue and work hard on. When we say it's person-centred, then what do people think we mean by person-centred? Shout out your answers if you don't mind, because you're...
Would it be something similar to like the Gary Mitchell case study, where you're basing an evident how you write the essay around one individual?
It can be. So we do say that you could do a case study or write about a particular person that you either come across in practice or you come across before. So it could be something like that where it's case-based and centred on one particular person. What we really want to see is something like that, or that it's very specifically about the needs of the person, how we assess, plan, implement and evaluate care around people's needs. And it may be about one person, or it might be more generally about a group of people and all those kind of things. But it's really about how we want to see how in your practice and practice you see, you're putting people with learning disabilities, service users or a service user, right at the core of what you do, so that you're not putting the needs of yourself first, you're not putting the needs of the service first, or if you see that in your practice, you explore that and kind of go, actually, yeah, I can see that actually this person's needs weren't met because the needs of the service around things like staffing and training and things like that were put first. So we want to see how you can promote putting the needs of service users first. And that's really what we mean by that. Okay, so it's that kind of sense of it. In the middle of this whole process, we're going to do some formative and peer feedback, and I'm going to give you all the stuff just to show you that a little bit later, so I'm not going to dwell on that now, but you're actually going to write an essay proposal in the new year, and you're going to give it to a partner to give you some feedback on, and I will also give you some feedback on it as well. Okay? So the subject for this can be pretty much anything that you're interested in writing about. So it can be, we used to do this module, we gave you a specific, each of you chose a specific health topic related to learning disabilities, and I'll show you a list of the things that you can choose from to do. And it was specifically around a health topic and a health and well-being topic, rather than the wider kind of learning disabilities issues. However, we felt that it would be perhaps more fun, more interesting for you if you have something that's a real area of interest for you. So if you're not interested in things like coronary heart disease or dementia and those kind of things, that's not really your kind of thing that you're interested in, that kind of more medical health stuff, but you're interested in service development for people with autism, or you know something specific about a particular condition that a service user's that you've come across has got, then you can write about that. So you can pretty much write about anything you want on this one. My plea would be is you check it with me before you go off down a blind alley talking about something that's going to be difficult to write about or isn't relevant. Okay? So that'd be my only plea, is that you discuss it with me to kind of say, I want to write about this. Just ping me an email, say I want to write about this, how does that feel? And I'm sure I'll probably go, that's okay, or I might go, I've never heard of that, that'd be really interesting, go ahead, okay? So that's what we want you to do. And I said the assignment proposal you do will be reviewed by a member of staff, and it'll be me. It'd be difficult for me to do them all, that sort of thing. It used to be Robert, who used to work here, who used to do them with me, so I need to co-opt one of my colleagues at least to do that with me. So, but I will tell you who to send that to, whether you send it to me or whether you send it to whoever else is doing it. And you will send it to one of a partner in your group, a colleague, and you will get it peer reviewed as well. And I will show you all that kind of stuff. What you have to do. So, what should be in it then? So, if you choose a specific health-based topic, ironic picture of a nurse there, she's going to appear throughout this. You think that's ironic? If you look on the UE website at Learning Disability Nursing, and you see the picture they've got of there to represent learning disability nursing, it's a nurse in a uniform shining a light into the eyes of the patient. You're going to be doing lots of that in your career, ladies and gentlemen, wearing uniforms, shining lights into people's eyes. No, you're not ever going to do that, or hardly ever do that. So anyway, so we're having that change because it's awful. And I think that's what some of the picture taking stuff was about today. So anyway, so if you're going to do a health-based topic, you're going to, we want you to pick a topic, and either from a list, which I'm going to show you in a minute, or something you've experienced in practice. So if you're out there in practice and you come across a health condition that you haven't come across before, or is particularly interesting or particularly relevant to your placement, you can write about that. Again, I don't mind what you write about. This is your piece of work. So it's better if it's something you're interested in, and particularly if it's something you've come across. Compared to CIDW, we want a more, in some sense, a more traditional, if you like, kind of essay, if you like, with things like an introduction in it and a conclusion. CIDW didn't really have that much time for that, so we'd like a proper introduction. This is what I'm going to write about. This is how I'm going to write about it. This is what my thing's been. You've got 3,000 words. You've got a bit more room in this one to kind of spread your wings a bit in your academic writing a little bit. So we want you to do that. So a nice proper introduction we want to see. And again, we ask you to write about that in the proposal. Give a clear definition of the health condition. Okay, so if it's, for example, it's Alzheimer's disease linked to Down syndrome, we want a clear definition of what that is. We want you to write about it, both in general terms and so a bit of, not quite medically stuff, but stuff about what it is. And you can use, if you want to use some pictures and diagrams and that kind of thing, that's fine, or you can put them in an appendix. But we want a clear definition of that health condition. Okay, not necessarily at this point linked directly to learning disabilities, but so you write about what it is. So if you're writing about kidney failure, if you're writing about coronary heart disease, research it, find some information about it, and I mean different things to write about as well, not just one book, one medical dictionary. We want to see some stuff and some things from journal articles and things like that, okay? A little bit, so you've got a little, again, it's that engaging with a range of literature. If you just find one thing, even if it's a really good thing, you also want some other things to write about it. Something like epilepsy, for example. There's lots of things you can find about epilepsy and lots of different sources. Yes, Alex?
About how many words would you put for both of those two sections?
Well, that's a good question, really. It depends a bit on what it is. If there's a lot to write about it, then go for it a bit. Again, I think we don't give you such a breakdown in this one, but you're probably looking at, well, if we go through and look at all the other things that be in it, and then we can sort of, you kind of get an idea of the balance, really. So you'd probably be looking at, I don't know, a quarter of it, maybe? That would be, I don't want you all now to go off and go, right, a quarter is this amount of words, I've got to write that many words. Play around with it a bit, but do your own stuff on it. But it is a good question, because again, it's about how you structure it, and all those issues. So here are some of the things that will be in that definition. You would describe the basic symptoms, the effects, and the general pathology. So what is it like? How does it affect people? Does it make people ill? How does it make people ill? Those kind of things. Okay, so you're talking about in general terms there. So if you're talking about coronary heart disease, it's about anyone who has coronary heart disease. So you're talking some general kind of more health medical type stuff here. Describe treatments and associated pharmacology. Now you've done some physiology and pharmacology. Okay, so I know you know some stuff about that. So we want to see a little bit of stuff about that. Again, not masses and masses on it, but if somebody has coronary heart disease or high blood pressure or anxiety or stress, there are all sorts of treatments, and some of which are pharmacological and some of which aren't, that we'd want to know a little bit about. Then, there's a key bit for you, make the link to learning disabilities. Okay, so why, perhaps, is it more prevalent within the learning disabled population? And this is where you then start getting into some of your more specific learning disability stuff. Okay, what are the problems of treating it are, such as communication, understanding, consent, etc. Okay, so I was talking to one of my dissertation students this morning, and she wants to write her dissertation about supporting people with dental care and some of the problems with that kind of stuff. And there are all sorts of issues. So she's looking at things like sedating people before they go, the problems that they have, that people with learning disabilities might have around those kind of things. So she's doing exactly the same thing. She's looking at what some of the problems are of treating it, and some of the issues around communication, understanding and consent. Okay, so this is, you know, quite interesting kind of stuff for you to look at. Any questions about any of that? It's relatively straightforward. And in a minute, when I give you the list of stuff, you'll see there are things that perhaps are a little bit more prevalent in the learning disabled population than they are. So, what you might also explore is why. So why, for example, is coronary heart disease more prevalent in the learning disabled population than the non-learning disabled population? Anyone like to have a stab a guess at that one? Diet? Yeah. Exercise. Sleep. Explain that to me.
If you don't have enough sleep, it's going to weaken your immunology.
Okay.
So you're going to be less fire in your body, basically.
So you know more about these things than I do, probably. So it's good. So those things are really interesting things, and that's where we go. So when you then start to think about, in a minute, about how do we as learning disability nurses support people with this, what is our role as a learning disability nurse? You'll be looking at all those things, and that's why this kind of more health and not clinical knowledge, but you know, underpinning understanding of these things is really important. Okay, so and that's how you do it. So there are all sorts of reasons why things like coronary heart disease, it's all those kind of things, exercise, diet, etc. Okay, and you can explore those. Again, I'm going to labour the point with reference to literature. Okay, because this is a bigger assignment. We're going to expect to see a few more references in this one. This isn't one you can get away with 10 references on. Okay, so again, we'd be looking at if that rule of thumb is 1 for 100 words, and it is only a rule of thumb, you'll be looking somewhere in the region of 25 to 35 references for this. Okay, that sounds a lot, but you're going to be doing quite a bit more reading around it. This is a bigger assignment, you know. So again, I would say the bare minimum, and please don't come back and say, Nick, you said 20 was alright. The bare minimum will be 20 good words, okay, not 20 bits of stuff that you've just found. But, you know, bare minimum 20, but if you start getting up to 40, 45, then as I said, Mr. LW is showing off. All right, and that's great if you could do it, it's great if you do it, but you don't need to do that for this. You know, and again, we don't mark you down for that, but we all secretly up there in our offices. No. I'm kidding. So what else should be in it? Okay, so this is, again, a real key bit that we want to see. So this is the bit now that we're hoping that you're getting a little bit more excited about. Your role as a learning disability nurse. What's unique about what we do as learning disability nurses? And hopefully when you start getting out into practice, you'll be exploring that a little bit more, but you can start exploring that here. So what is the role of the learning disability nurse in supporting the person with learning disabilities and this condition? Okay? And developing, implementing, evaluating and treating care plan. So again, you may want to base it on something you see in practice, and you may want to base it on something you see a nurse doing in your practice area. Okay? So you can actually see it with your own eyes, and you can kind of think, okay, this is what I've seen, this is what I've experienced. Okay? And that's a real key bit here for you. We want to see that you're beginning to understand a little bit about what that role is. Sometimes that role won't look that much different to what any other nurse would do, but there will be some things you do that's different. And we want to see you talking a little bit about things in here, about how people communicate effectively with people, consider some of the ethical considerations around things like consent, working with that person. Okay, so that's what we want to see a little bit in there. Is there any questions about that? There's one question we often get asked in that, which is about, can I base it on a person in practice? And yes, you can, change the names and all that kind of stuff. But yes, you can base it on things you've seen in practice, a person that you've worked with, a case study type thing. The other question we always get asked is, can you use the first person in this? Can you say, I did this, I experienced this, I saw this? Yes, you can. Okay, so you can write in the first person this, because although this isn't reflective in the way that we want that CIDW was around a bit of video, so it's about your practice and what you did and what you saw. And it might be some of the stuff that you did that you worked with that person to do it. Okay? So using I is okay. Alright? Then at the end, obviously some things there. Conclude your essay, kind of goes without saying, but a nice introduction, give yourself a nice conclusion, draw some conclusions from what you've done and round it off in a nice way. There again, we're not going to massively, if you haven't got a big introduction and a big conclusion, we're not going to particularly mark you down for that. It's just rounding it off nicely and doing a nice piece of academic writing. Okay? You can use appendices in this assignment, some you can, some you can't. You can use appendices in this one. So if you're writing about epilepsy, for example, and you want to put in diagrams of the brain and things like that, if you can put it in your main body, but you can also use appendices and stuff like that. So, if, for example, you in your practice use a risk assessment for something, particularly, so something like an epilepsy risk assessment or a SUDEP risk assessment, or if you're writing about challenging behaviour and it's a risk assessment of how you support that person out in public, you can use those as appendices. Okay,
and
so
that's
we.
Not in your word count, is it?
No. No, anything's in the appendix is not in your work count. Again, don't take the mickey by writing loads of stuff. We don't want to see lots of your original writing in the appendices. Okay, so we don't want to say, but if it's something, so if you're involved, for example, in writing or developing a risk assessment for a person, then we'd want to see a bit of writing about that in your main body, but the actual risk assessment document or whatever it is in the appendix, okay? So those sorts of things would be things like documents, risk assessments, initial assessments, hospital, traffic light systems, all those kind of things. So anything that you've written about that would be useful for me as the reader to get some context for it. Or it might be a policy, it might be a hospital policy, a home policy, anything along those lines. Okay, again, if you're not sure, contact me and I'll say yes, that's fine, put that in, or don't put that in. But mostly on the whole, it's fine to put it in. You don't want 25 appendices because, again, not going to get looked at really. Key things. I don't mean that in a horrible way, but again, we haven't got the time or space to look at 25 different detailed documents in there. So 2 or 3 key things that will help us with some context to what we're looking at and just supports what you've written. Okay, any questions about that?
Sounds a bit like a mini care plan.
You could do it almost as a care plan if you wanted to, yeah, or a thing, as long as you make it clear that's what you're doing, that's fine. We want to give you a bit of freedom here to actually choose something that you want to do, something that interests you, and it might be, you work through, I don't know, say for example you're involved in a mental capacity assessment or a best interest decision for somebody, that would be a really interesting thing to do almost as a case study, wouldn't it? And so right in, so you say your introduction, there'll be, this is a bit about what I'm writing about, you talk through the process, you append some documents at the end, so it's those sorts of things. So it doesn't have to be a health thing, it can be anything that you want to write about, okay? But yeah, absolutely. However you want to do this really, we want you to have a bit of freedom and imagination in terms of what you do here and embrace it and it be yours, rather than something that we do. So here's the, oops, sorry. So here's the top, so again, you'll be able to look at this. So these are some of the health things that people have done in the past. Don't have to use one of those, it doesn't matter if more than one of you write about it, it doesn't matter, it's not like the thing with the wiki yesterday and those kind of things. So any of those kind of things, all of which are things which are a bit more, so this, even if I can't put the film of this up on Blackwell, I'll put the thing up so you can have this, yeah.
Does it have to be really specific, or could it be just mental health? Or does it have to be a specific type
No, I think mental health will be okay. I think you'd have to some extent be a bit more specific than that though, even within that topic. So if you just write, because it doesn't tell me, if you write that people are just more prone to mental health issues.
No, but and then find out, oh, like this one was higher.
Yes.
With an LD.
Yeah.
Just so rather than just saying, oh, I'm just going to do schizophrenia.
Yes. Yes, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, if you want to do that a little bit broader, kind of go look at it
I
in
just
terms
thought it
of
might
like,
give you a bit more
I
to
agree,
talk about.
yeah, no, absolutely fine. Yeah. So again, and that might, what that might come into really. So there's all sorts of stuff there, and those are the health things. Choose one of those if you want. You might know something else yourself. We've had people that have come up with sort of genetic conditions and things like that, again, that we've never heard of and things like that, which means a bit of hurried research by us before I can mark it. And so that's great, that's fine. I love that in actual fact. If you come up with something we haven't really thought about, that's you testing us and stretching us, and I think that's absolutely brilliant, and I love that when you do that. So if it's something that's a bit out there, check it out with us first, or check it out with me first before you go right down the route of writing something and then find out it's not got anything to do with learning disabilities at all. We had one lady who did something, it was like about 1 in 10 million people got this condition, I'm exaggerating a bit, of which about 1% of those were people with learning disabilities. There's probably about one person with this condition with a learning disability in the whole world. And I let her go with it, but it was, those sort of things, it's kind of, but if you write a decent essay and some good stuff in it, if you research some stuff and we've all learned something, then we're all right. That was just kind of the way that I looked at that. So again, choose one of those if you want to. Don't if there's something else that you know about, then absolutely fine. So just to go then, just to look at. So if you choose something, then I think your question is really kind of about this in a way. If you choose something from the wider learning disability context, so not just a specific condition, then that's absolutely fine. And that might be linked to mental health. It might be comorbidity with mental health issues and that kind of stuff, in which case you would explore that in a wider context. So pick a topic either from the module content or something you've experienced in practice. Don't mind. You might look at the module content stuff and think, yeah, that's great, want to write about that, that's interesting. But if it's not, and if it's something from outside the module content that you know about, or you're interested in your experience, or you experience in practice, absolutely fine. My plea would be just run it by me. I'm sure I will say fine, but just so that we know and we don't get a bit of a surprise, and you get a bit of a surprise when we say this has got nothing to do with LD, okay? And again, same things really. Introduce the assignment, give a clear definition of the topic. So if you're talking about mental health, yeah, you're going to have to figure out how you define that and how you look at that and what the issue is, whether you're talking about general sort of comorbidity or whether you're talking about a specific condition within there. Okay, so again, just play around with it and discuss it with us if you want to do something along those lines. Again, we do want to see the relevance to learning disability. Okay, so don't just write about, psychopathy, for instance, because that's a mental health thing, or whatever, or just write about anxiety. We want to know why, what's the link to learning disability? Why is anxiety a more common thing within the learning disabled population? Okay, those sorts of things. Okay, and the same kind of stuff then. So explore the issue, define it if it's relevant to this line, describe sort of interventions. So again, if you're saying it's about comorbidity with mental health issues, what's the causes of those kind of things? Why does that happen to people? Then look at things like interventions or the philosophy surrounding this. So what's some of the background stuff that we think about in terms of learning disability, our values in terms of supporting people? And if it is something like mental health issues, why is it more prevalent within the learning disabled population, those sorts of things. Okay? So make that link there. And all the other things associated with issues such as communication, understanding, consent. So it's the same model of assignment, whatever you choose to do, really. This kind of link to LD, and of course the role of the learning disability nurse in supporting the person with LD in this situation, i.e. implementing and evaluating interventions. Same thing. So conclude your essay, you can use. Okay, so that's the main structure of those kind of what we want from you. You can play about with it a bit, as I said. If there's something else you want to do, that's absolutely fine. I say just kind of run it past me before you go down a route so that we can do that. And I'm just checking whether there's anything else in here that I need to tell you on film. Okay, I think we covered some of these things, so I'm going to skip over that because we did some of that in CIDW, so we touched on it just a little bit, and we can maybe explore that another time. So I'm conscious of the time. It's very hot and you need a break. Okay. You need to demonstrate some of these things in it, okay? And again, I think we've talked about all these kind of things. A sound evidence base. And now hopefully you're beginning to think about what that means in terms of a sound evidence base. And I do make a joke about I'veHurtMyLeg.com, but it's an example of the things we see. I don't particularly want to see MindWorks in this, or Wikipedia, and those kind of things. We want to see you using journal articles, books, NICE guidelines. So there's virtually a NICE guideline for everything. If you're looking at autism, there's autism NICE guidelines, all those kind of things. Everyone know what NICE is? NICE is Clinical Excellence. It's really good, some really good stuff in there. It's a very good springboard for other things. It's always a good starting point. So if you're looking to define something, think about what standard procedures are for working with people, NICE guidelines are a very, very good place to start. Lots of other NHS guidance. You can use websites, but I don't want to see only websites, and that's the same for any assignment that you're doing. Okay, so the odd website here and there is fine. Use them as springboards to other things. NHS choices is something we see quite a bit. It's okay, but I don't want to see that as your main source. Okay. Other things you can use, policies and things like that, and lots of these things, so like reports, and again, you know, bearing in mind what we've said about analysing these kind of things, and the Winter Board Year Review, valuing people now, MATS reports, SIPOLD, all those kind of things. Again, you're familiar with this kind of stuff now. But it's that, so it's these sort of things, journal articles, books, etc., and then some of the policy documents that sit behind it. Why are we doing some of these kind of things again? So it's a variety, a wide range of things. Some of these will be relevant to your topic, some won't. Okay, they're just examples. All right, so you don't necessarily need to write all those down, and I'll put this on Blackboard when I get back if it's not up there already. But you know, some of these things, like the confidential inquiry that Leslie was involved in, will be very relevant to a lot of the topics that you use, particularly if you use a health topic. Okay. Any questions about that? What you should use? Materials. Does anybody want to ask me? Can I use a? No? Okay, so you're fairly clear on that. Sometimes people go, you know, can I use Kerrang magazine to reference it? No. You know, can I use an, yeah?
About asking, at AP, that the lady said that it's better to use just library research. Shall we do it the same?
So it is better to just use the library search. It's the best place to start in a sense, because you've got on hand, on one click of a mouse, just about every relevant health journal and book that's been written in the last 30 or 40 years. So it's a really good place to start, I think. And part of me thinks, why would a student just go to Google and Google stuff when they've got it narrowed down already into everything pretty much that you need? So that would be my first point, that would definitely be a first port of call, would be library search and some of the databases they've got on there. Now at this point we don't expect you to know lots of stuff about and how to use the different databases which are on there. So like CINAHL and all those kind of things. We don't necessarily expect that of you. You can get most of it by just Googling stuff, you know, typing search terms into the library search. And for what we're expecting for you at level 1, that's fine. If you want to look wider and you know, it's good experience and good practice to do it. But it's a good place to start. It's a good place to start. And then if you can't find enough stuff, I'd be very surprised if you can't find enough stuff in there on the things that we're asking you to write about. If you can't, then maybe go to Google Scholar and look at, you know, much more specific kind of database and those kind of things. But you're still, some of you will be very accomplished searchers. Some of you will just be starting to develop those skills, okay? So start with a library, branch out if you don't get enough stuff. Is that okay? And all those things will be there. Journal articles, there's millions and millions of journal articles on there. You know, and you'll be finding too much stuff rather than not enough. So you need to think then a little bit about your search terms and how you do that. What else? What What else can we say?
Things like the Nursing Times, I got reprimanded for
Yeah.
nursing.
Nursing Times, what do people think then? Why, what was
Because
the...
I know it's got a bias towards, because it is a Nursing Times, but
Yeah.
for context of wider reading,
Yeah.
it gives you ideas for so many different topics.
Yes. So, that's, yeah, so you, actually, that was the question I was going to say and then I forgot. So, things like the Nursing Times, Nursing Standard and those kind of things, again, they're okay actually. I wouldn't have reprimanded you for that, I don't think. I might have said, okay, don't use this too much. I think something like Nursing Times is okay to use, but you wouldn't want it when you've got loads and loads and loads and loads of really authoritative, peer-reviewed. Do you know what I mean by peer review? Okay, so if anyone does it, it would mean that. So if I were to submit an article to a journal, it doesn't just someone just go, that's nice, we'll stick that in. It's sent. You have to send it for peer review, and you get it back about 3 times that you have to make changes in and all sorts of stuff before you do it. For the Nursing Times, basically you send something in, if they quite like it, they'll edit it a bit and stick it in. So it's not as authoritative and as well reviewed as, for example, I don't know, British Institute of Learning Disabilities Journal or the British Medical Journal, all those kind of things. So again, for greater authority, you'd be looking at things like journal articles in particular in you know, those very standard peer-reviewed journals. Okay, and again, you'll learn this much more as you go through, and you'll start to get much more out. So in this, I'm not going to object to someone using something out in Nursing Times if it's relevant. What I wouldn't want it to be is your main thing that you've looked at. Similarly with nursing standards and those kind of things. Okay, or you know, as you go down these things, you know, you would probably say, yeah, okay, other NHS guidance. So I'd probably put Nursing Times above there. Nursing Standard, and then you come down to here would be like, you know, a blog, and there's some useful things in there that might lead you off to other things. But you know, websites, blogs, blah blah blah, leaflet that someone gave you in the street, and all those kind of things. Okay, and they're all material, they're all sources, but it's about, and you know, when you do evidence-based practice next year, you'll find what we talk about is hierarchy of them, and they start with things like journals and books and whatnot, and they come down as you go down. Okay, so they are okay. Newspapers, what do you think? No, again, we use them a bit in sessions, and again, if there's something that is relevant, I would say, you know, you can mention it, you could bring it in, because it might be relevant, it might show that it's relevant to the time that we're in. Again, but you know, back page of the Sun, no, front page of the Times, maybe. Those sorts of things, okay? And again, you know that stuff, but we'll just say it so that then I don't see lots of stuff from the Daily Mail.
You'll love that.
So what are we looking for? We're looking for some of these things. Good knowledge and understanding. Do you show good knowledge and understanding of health conditions? Have you understood it? Have what you've written right? Is it fairly well researched? Do you understand the application to learning disabilities? Why is it relevant? Right, is your terminology correct? I was looking again at a dissertation student thing today where she'd used a phrase about an ethical approach to something and she spelt it wrong. It was the wrong word, it wasn't there. So things like that. So it's little things like that. Is your terminology correct? And again, you know, we're not going to beat you up for getting your spelling a bit wrong. Everybody gets that wrong bit, but try and do those things. Is it up to date and relevant? So how far back do we sort of suggest?
10 years.
About 10 years, okay. Again, there's going to be loads of stuff about what you've written within those 10 years. If you want to use something, as we say, that is a seminal text, then that's fine. If it's really or and the odd one from outside that is fine. What we don't want to see is everything from the Collins Dictionary of Health, 12th edition, 1963. Okay, and don't think that students don't do it because they can. Management and learning resources, so these kind of things. You know, is it well researched? A variety of resources. Okay, so and it's okay to use the odd thing that's not quite as whizzy, as long as you've got some whizzy and well researched stuff in there. Are those things legitimate and authoritative? And that's what I mean by the journals rather than the Daily Mail. Is it referenced correctly? Okay, again, it's starting to get a little bit more serious about referencing now. Okay, CIDW was practice. This is where we want to, if we can, see it as far as possible reference correctly, and I mean technical referencing, where your commas are and those kind of things. I know there's a couple of things we need to sort out, but if you can start doing that now, it's going to stand you in good stead for going forward. Okay. Is it well organised with an introduction, main body and conclusion? Again, you can play around with that a little bit. Have you pulled together a variety of relevant material? So I've covered all these things. Is any view you express evidence-based? Okay, well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but we see so much stuff where it's kind of like you might as well write in front of it, I reckon that, blah, 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 okay? So anything you do, I want to see a reference somewhere near it, okay? That it's come from something that we can see, that it's not just, you know, this is what I read somewhere, I heard down the pub. But someone said on Facebook the other day, if you write anything like that, I will hunt you down. No, that's on film now. But like, you know, we don't want to see those things. We want to see, you know, proper evidence-based stuff, and that's the stuff that you should be doing in all your assignments now. Can you demonstrate the relevance to your practice? So we want to see if you can link it to your practice, that's great. And have you considered the ethical issues such as consent choice? And you should be doing that really, particularly if you're talking about treatments for people, if it's medicines, pharmacology, those kind of things, those ethical issues about consent choice. Service use, I meant to write family in there as well, sorry, so service use and family involvement and non-discriminatory practice. So all the stuff that we just do naturally as learning disability ministers. Any questions about any of that? There's quite a lot of information there. Basically, we wanted to see some decent references, we want to see it fairly well put together and linked a bit to practice and some application. That's all, that's a very simple way of saying it. Okay. I think we talked about analysis and synthesis earlier, so for anyone watching this video, we've already talked about that, so I'm not going to go into that again. So I was planning on talking about it a bit, so I'm going to skip that now because we have done that. You haven't got that on film. This was a little bit that I was looking at, which kind of comes to what you're saying about the linking of ideas. So this is how I wanted to express that, and I hope I expressed that like that earlier. So synthesis is this logical linking of ideas and seeing that wider picture, if you like. So here's how, this is the not very synthesised way of writing stuff. So you write about, for example, if you're writing about autism, sorry, I should have put that on there somewhere, autism, and you write about autism and anxiety, then you write about autism and people's reliance on routines, then you write about sensory issues, then you write about challenging behaviour, then you write about some interventions. That's all fine, that's all good stuff, but actually, if you link the ideas together and you get that kind of synthesis, what you've got is not just a kind of linear thing, it's much more interwoven with each other. So actually, you'd be writing really about all of these things, because they're linked, aren't they? So the challenging behaviour and the anxiety and the reliance on routine, they're not just separate things for people with autism, they're very much linked to the sensory issues that a person has in terms of being able to manage the environment around them. So what's some of the main interventions we do with people with autism now? We think about the environment around the person, rather than those kind of things, so rather than behaviour modification and stuff. So actually those things are all linked. They're not separate ideas, they're all very, very much linked. So that synthesis is where you somehow